Breaking just now, Maduro, the president says, has been captured. Nicolas Maduro, president of Venezuela, has been captured, says President Trump. There will be a news conference at Mar-a-Lago on this at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Let me read you the full statement from the president. Quote, the United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with the U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow. There will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. What a stunning, incredible move for this to occur by the United States of America to again try to bring an alleged narco-terrorist boss to justice. Your thoughts, Dr. Grant, on what message there is to those in Moscow and Tehran and the enemies of the United States that the U.S. and the Trump administration can do something like this?
Yes, it's just so swift and decisive, and it enables Venezuela now to have a legitimately elected government and to be on the road to prosperity. And I think that should really shake the Ayatollah and those leaders in Iran. And I think it should also make Vladimir Putin realize that Trump is absolutely serious about bringing the war in Ukraine to an end. Anyway, but a focus here on what Trump has laid out for us, which is attention to this hemisphere, making good now on that extremely strong speech given to the UN right before Christmas, saying that Maduro was a fugitive from justice and America would do everything in our power to end this narco-terrorism. Hey, any other drug cartels out there, anybody else involved? Very, very serious. And there goes a shadow fleet oil source for China. Shame on China for having helped keep Maduro in power, just like he helps keep Russia fighting in Ukraine. But incredible development. Again, huge display of American leadership. I'm glad to see it.
And
at first, it felt, or it sounded like there was a huge truck or like a big plane flying around. And then there was kind of an earthquake. And then, as it was described before, explosions started happening. The sky started to lit up in orange. There was fire blowing. You can still hear the planes right now, but there hasn't been an explosion in a few minutes. Windows are shaking. Everyone's blowing up my phone. We were calling each other. People from outside of the country and inside of the country are calling each other, making sure, are you close to the explosion? What are you seeing? Everyone's on high alert. Again, nobody really knows what's going on, but we can see clearly it's getting bombarded. This is unusual for Venezuela. This is not something we're used to, honestly, on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. As a Venezuelan American, I got some shit to say. My family, my parents, my sister, my extended family, all lost everything. Their work, their savings, their investments, gone. Wiped out by a narco-dictatorship that has held Venezuela in a death grip for over 25 years. And what happened to my family has happened to millions, and yes, millions. The Venezuelan exodus is the second largest displacement crisis on earth after Syria. This is not just a tragedy. It is one of the great humanitarian disasters of our time. But the suffering doesn't end there. This regime has jailed hundreds of political prisoners. Thousands have been murdered simply for speaking out. More than a third of the population has fled. 1/3. Not for better opportunities or for the American dream, but to survive, to live, because staying often means death. And while the world may see Venezuela as a collapsed state, what it is in reality is an occupied one. Our territory, our natural resources, and our institutions have been overrun by hostile foreign powers. Iranian militias, Chinese corporations, Russian intelligence, all exploiting our country with impunity. Venezuela is no longer just a local crisis. It is now a geopolitical threat that endangers the entire Western Hemisphere. It has become a launch pad for an authoritarian expansion in the Americas. And in the midst of all of this, one woman has dared to lead the charge for freedom. Maria Corina Machado. In 2024, against every odd, she led a peaceful democratic uprising that won the election. Her team smuggled physical voting receipts out of the country, hard proof of victory that the regime tried to bury. Her courage has lit a fire in the hearts of millions of Venezuelans desperate to believe that change is still possible. But now some have questioned her decision to dedicate her Nobel Prize to Donald Trump. Okay, I get that. But here's the truth. It was a brilliant strategic move in the global chessboard of politics. Maria Corina is no fool. She knows exactly the kind of man Trump is. She knows how much he campaigned for it, loudly and relentlessly, to win that very same prize. She knows how symbolic and personal that recognition is to him. And precisely because of that, she understood that this gesture might be the thing that keeps his attention focused on Venezuela at a time when U.S. presence and pressure in the Caribbean is rising. She didn't dedicate that award to flatter him. She did it to protect and preserve the one kind of power that could help shift the course of history. Because for her, this isn't about pride. It's not about optics. It's about freedom. And let's be very clear. Maria Corina is not asking for the U.S. to invade Venezuela. She's not campaigning for war. Venezuela is already invaded. It is held hostage by a narco state, overrun by foreign agents and enemies of democracy, Russians, Iranians, Chinese, all operating freely, weaponizing our land and resources to expand their influence across Latin America. What Maria Corina is calling for, what millions of Venezuelans are praying for, is the support of the only military on earth capable of countering that threat and helping to free our people. This is not imperialism. This is liberation. She's not playing partisan games. She's playing for Venezuela's life. Because this isn't theoretical. This isn't academic. This is life or death. So yes, it is time to honor her bravery, but more importantly, it is time for the world, especially the free world, to recognize what's at stake. The fight for Venezuela is a fight for freedom, for democracy, and for the stability of an entire continent. If we truly care about liberty, human dignity, and peace in the Americas, then Venezuela's fight must matter to all of us. Que viva Venezuela, que viva Maria Corina Machado.
We've now reached the point where the leftists are literally defending Maduro and saying that Trump should not have taken him from Venezuela. They're calling it a kidnapping. This is the state of the left right now in America. They're literally siding with Maduro, a brutal, murderous, communist dictator, over their own president because they're mad. I don't even know what they're mad about, because all the Venezuelans are literally jumping for joy in the streets. There are celebrations all throughout Caracas, all throughout all of Venezuela. The celebrations in every Venezuelan diaspora community. Literally the only people that are angry about Maduro being captured are Maduro and his wife. And honestly, the wife is probably pretty happy about it too. We are going to see Venezuela actually be able to thrive with Maria Corina Machado, or whatever leader they put in place is going to be better than Maduro. And you know what? Nothing made me as happy as to see Trump literally bomb the fucking mausoleum of Hugo Chavez. That's the Trump effect. That's the Trump touch. Oh, and let me just say, Rubio is the best Secretary of State the United States of America has ever had, because this is the work of Rubio. This is an incredible day. It's truly history. And if you're an American siding with Maduro over Trump, I hope you get the same treatment that Maduro is about to get. Don't drop the soap, Nicolas. Don't drop it.
On the early morning of January 3rd, 2026, the United States executed a sweeping military operation in Venezuela, resulting in the reported capture of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, according to a post on Truth Social by US President Donald Trump. The rapid and dramatic announcement has sent shockwaves through Latin America, Europe, and global capitals from Washington to Moscow. Explosions were reported in Caracas and across several strategic military sites in Venezuela. American aircraft and naval assets were visible over Venezuelan airspace in what appears to be a large-scale coordinated strike. Videos and eyewitnesses accounts describe blasts near military complexes, including Fuerte and La Calota airfield, triggering panic and confusion in the capital. The Venezuelan government has condemned the operation as an imperialist attack and declared a state of emergency. Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has demanded proof of life for Maduro and called on citizens to mobilize in defense of the nation. The United States has not yet released a full official statement, and many questions remain about legality, international law, and the future of Venezuelan governance. This is what you need to know: the historical background of U.S.-Venezuela relation. To understand this historical moment, one must look back at nearly a century of interactions between the United States and Venezuela, a relationship shaped by oil, Cold War geopolitics, diplomacy, mutual suspicion, and repeated crises. This is what I feel should be the early ties through oil. Venezuela was a major supplier of oil to the United States throughout much of the 20th century. American oil companies dominated Venezuelan petroleum extraction and infrastructure until the industry was gradually nationalized, a process completed in 1970s when the Venezuelan state took control of its own oil sector. Chavez, the Bolivarian Revolution, and the rising tensions. When Hugo Chavez was elected in 1999, he sharply turned Venezuela's policy toward nationalism and anti-US rhetoric. Chavez's government redistributed oil wealth and formed alliances with left-wing governments in Latin America, while distances Caracas from Washington. The US viewed this shift with concern, while Venezuela accused the US of meddling in its internal affairs. In 2002, a short-lived coup removed Chavez from power for 48 hours, an event long remembered as a defining moment of mistrust. Both governments traded accusations of complicity and interference. Now, this is what you need to know: the Maduro's rise and the deepening crisis. After Chavez's death in 2013, his deputy Nicolas Maduro became president. His tenure coincided with Venezuela's severe economic collapse, marked by hyperinflation, widespread shortages, mass immigration, and rising crime. Maduro's government pushed back hard against opposition movements and international criticism, deepening polarization. Sanctions begin. The United States began imposing sanctions on Venezuelan officials in the mid-2010s, targeting those accused of human rights abuses, undermining democracy, and corruption. Over time, these sanctions expanded to include Venezuela's state-owned oil company PDVSA, restricting Venezuela's access to U.S. financial markets. Sanctions worsened Venezuela's economic crisis and forced Caracas to seek support from Russia, China, and Iran, further straining U.S.-Venezuela relations. The escalation of 2025, renewed sanctions and blockades. In late 2025, the United States intensified economic pressure, sanctioning Venezuela oil companies and tankers linked to the regime, claiming proceeds fuel narco-terrorism and criminal networks that they are into drugs and all of that. U.S. forces also seized Venezuelan oil tankers on the high seas, actions Venezuela termed piracy. A U.S. naval air presence grew in the Caribbean, including warships, aircraft carriers, and thousands of troops. The Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) issued advisories and restricted Venezuelan airspace use due to heightened military activity. Now, here is the military engagements and preludes to war. In December 2025, U.S. strikes targeted drug-related facilities in Venezuelan territory, which U.S. officials describe as part of counter-narco operations. Caracas denied these allegations, framing them as pretext of escalation. Tensions were further inflamed by incidents such as Venezuelan fighter jets buzzing U.S. naval vessels during deployment in international waters, symbolic of the deterioration relationship. What happened in the operation? The U.S. strike. In the early hours of January 3rd, explosions were heard in Caracas and multiple regions across Venezuela. U.S. aircraft and potentially naval forces appear to have struck military complexes and command posts, creating a rapid loss of centralized control. Announcement and capture. President Donald J. Trump, announced on Truth Social that Maduro and his wife were captured and flown out of the country, framing it as a major blow against drug trafficking and authoritarianism. Details about their current location, precise circumstances of capture, and whether Venezuelan forces resisted are still emerging. This is what the reaction has been so far. Like almost 3 hours or 4 hours ago, that Donald Trump announced on his Truth Social that he has captured the president of Venezuela, Maduro. Venezuela has been labeled the action as an act of imperialism and called for mass resistance. Russia and Cuba has condemned U.S. military action and called for international intervention to defend Venezuelan sovereignty. Argentina has expressed support for the U.S., illustrating fractured regional opinion. The United Nations Security Council is expected to convene in emergency session as member states debate legality. The U.S. Congress has not formally authorized a declaration of war, raising questions about the legality of unilateral military action without legislative approval. International law experts are likely to debate whether the operation constitutes an act of aggression, a breach of sovereignty, or a legitimate counter-narcotics effort. So what comes next? At the time of writing, the situation remains fluid. It's unclear who is governing Venezuela in Maduro's absence. The claim has it that the deputy is now the acting president. We are yet to get the official report. Civilian casualties and infrastructure damage assessments are incomplete. Oil markets are reacting nervously due to the uncertainty over Venezuelan exports. International diplomacy could either escalate conflict, with global powers like Russia, China weighing in, or push for de-escalation through the United Nations. Here is the conclusion. The capture of Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, is now a dramatic turn. A dramatic turn unseen in Latin America since the 1989. U.S. invasion of Panama represents a peak in nearly 3 decades of deteriorating relations between the United States and Venezuela. From early cooperation around oil to deep political divides, sanctions, and military confrontations, this crisis encapsulates the complexities of 21st century geopolitics, where economic interest, human rights concerns, and power competition collide. So it's just all about economic interest. That's what I want to sum this whole thing up. Economic interest, human rights concern, and power competition. That's just what it's all about. Will Maduro be assassinated, the president of Venezuela? When US say that is international crime, what specific crime did he commit? Many believe it's because of their oil. They have the highest oil reserve, Venezuela, and seem like Venezuela is shifting their cooperation or partnership from US to China. I think yesterday or 2 days ago, Chinese officials visited Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, and possibly this might have been what led to US invading Venezuela. I would like to know your thoughts on this.